we make lofty goals, we make promises to ourselves and resolutions, but only 8% of them are carried through. And there are simply three reasons for that: because we don't have clear goals, we don't plan, and we do not learn from the past obstacles.
And something becomes stronger because you break it. That is anti-fragility. And the idea that you can't really predict, you can only plan, but then you can only plan with the knowledge that most of your plan is going to be obsolete the moment you write it down. Because something is going to change, some variable is going to change. If you're looking to 2025, my recommendation would be to intentionally think about how you can become stronger, whatever happens.
A lot of folks are planning their careers very actively now, as opposed to just letting things happen by default. Earlier, where we used to see people got support from was their organization primarily. Over the last 5-6 years, especially since COVID and mass layoffs, mass resignations that have been happening, we at least have been noticing that people are taking more and more control of their careers. They don't want to depend just on their organization.
Reflection. And that's a very high leverage habit. And I want to share a couple of statistics here. So there was this survey by Harvard Business Review, and they said that employees who spend just 15 minutes at the end of the day, reflecting on the lessons they performed, after 10 days, they start performing at a 23% higher rate. So another quick statistics that I want to share is that, we make lofty goals, we make promises to ourselves and resolutions, but only 8% of them are carried through. And there are simply three reasons for that: because we don't have clear goals, we don't plan, and we do not learn from the past obstacles. One, we should celebrate and remember our key achievements. We should identify our strength patterns or strength profile, as they say. And at the same time, we should identify and try and notice the pattern, that where are the places where we were challenged. And then deep dive, look at it, whether it was a knowledge issue, skill issue, attitude issue. And then, set developmental goals and prioritize those goals. This is how I think, in a nutshell, it would be to remember what happened, bucket it, and use it for the next step.
Plans are nothing, but planning is everything. It's a World War quote, so it has war connotations to it, but it's very, very valid for any kind of plan that you're making. In a way, it's a real dichotomy. It's a real dilemma. I'm making a plan for something I can't predict. So it's not like you can just walk through 3 steps and be done with 2025, because you don't know what's going to come. Just like how COVID hit us. So the muscle I like to kind of work on myself as well, and work with my clients as well, is the idea of anti-fragility, which is Nicholas Taleb's idea on the opposite of fragile is not rigid. It's not strong. It's something, if you break, it's fragile. If you hit it, it breaks, it's fragile. But the idea that can something become stronger because you break it? That is anti-fragility. And the idea that you can't really predict, you can only plan, but then you can only plan with the knowledge that most of your plan is going to be obsolete the moment you write it down. So because something is going to change, some variable is going to change. So the anti-fragility idea is about, if you're looking to 2025, my recommendation would be to intentionally think about how you can become stronger, whatever happens. So for example, Taleb talks about the example of airlines. If there's a flight crash or a flight, God forbid, something happens, then actually the next plane is actually better because of it. So if there's a disaster, if there's a difficulty, if there's a crisis, the next time a plane is built, it's actually much, much better because of that crisis. So thinking about what crises, building on the reflective recommendation from Richa, if you're thinking about 2024, think about what were the most difficult challenges you went through, and think about the next time it happens, what are you going to do differently, and how are you becoming stronger as a result of it. So to take another pop reference, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Absolutely. I think brilliant points there. And, one thing, Shyam, I think both of you might be aware, you both are career coaches, and you've also, helped large workforce, with training and career advancement. A lot of the practices that are there in the corporate today actually have a derivation from wars and military structures that were instituted during the First and
True.
the Second World War.
True.
Like the corporate structure as we know it today was actually invented in the 50s, right after World War II. And that, yeah, exactly. And so I think a lot of the things that we should be doing may not be as rigid as as what the military does, but I think we should look at that as at least a reference point. And if you look at, I mean, what the army or what the military does, I mean, they plan things to a T, right? There is no scope for ambiguity in what would happen in all kind of fringe scenarios, right? I don't think we need that level of planning for careers probably, but we are on the other side of the extreme, right? Like people not planning their careers. At least I know like people in my previous organizations and I myself never really planned what was going to happen to me in the next year, apart from some minor reflection at the end of the year, because our managers were like, hey, give me a one pager on what you did. I need to show my
Yeah.
manager.
Sure.
So apart from that, so I think, yeah, very relevant points. I also, Shyam, as you were talking about this, I got reminded of another quote which is one of my favorites from
Mm-hmm.
Charles Darwin, and it's all about adaptability, right? It's basically goes something like, it's not the smartest of species or the strongest of species that survive, it's the one most adaptable to change, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
I think this concept of anti-fragility, even though I think it has different connotations, not exactly the same, but I think it has parallels to this part, right? where
Sure.
where
Yeah.
you need to be ready for anything in today's kind of, hate this acronym, but the VUCA environment, as they say.
And if you talk about skills, the shelf life of a skill is only 5 years now, or even less. And AI, machine learning, all these things are changing very fast. So by 2030, 40% of the jobs as we know them would have changed. And
Wow.
by 2030, again, 65% of the skills required for jobs will change globally. Just as it is predicted that AI is going to wipe off 85 million jobs, it is also there that it is going to create 97 million jobs. Of course, there are different estimates from different people. Some people also say it might not be true, but this is what I picked up from World Economic Forum. So what is going to happen is that people will have to think about a fair balance of technical and soft skills. Learning agility is going to become very important. Digital literacy is going to become very important. Then analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, and creative thinking on the side of behavioral competencies. So data and AI on hard skills, and these are the other skills, because as the jobs change, people will be required to solve more complex problems. Peer into the future and see where they are going to make a mark for themselves.
So the idea of having a single career path with various things in between, I think that's changing to maybe portfolio careers where people are doing 2 3 things at the same time, like myself. And also the shift from that whole old kind of space of learn, earn, retire. So learn for what, 10 years, 15 years in school plus college or whatever, and then earn for 30 years and then retire and you're done. Put your feet up, read the paper, and so on. But I think now that, and to Richa's point, that timeline is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. I would say maybe even 5 to 7 years max, where you learn something, you earn from it, and then you don't retire. You just change and learn something else and earn from that, and then change again. And you may go through 7 8 10 cycles of this. Do we need to make time to adapt? I think adapting and staying resilient is the name of the game, and not necessarily new for 2025. I think it's been around for some time. But one last thing on this, Arjun. So with the advent of AI, what has changed? There's this beautiful little snip on YouTube. Please, people should find it, by the NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, talking to that amazing technology expert of our time, Akshay Kumar, at an interview, where Akshay Kumar says, "What is changing? What should we be worried about? What will AI do that I can't do?" And Jensen's answer is a masterclass. He says, AI cannot do everything we do. AI can do 20 to 30% of what we do 1,000 times better. So we need to know that 20 30% is going to go. But then we need to be really, really good at that other 70 80%. And you need to take a call. A couple of things that are coming up very strongly for me is, of course, change. Just change management. I mean, we still, I don't know, a huge proportion of change initiatives still fail, even though we have models like around for 100 years. There's too many factors. So I think we need to continue to be really, really good at change. I think influence, in the age of misinformation and over stimulated brains, just influencing people and getting decisions out of them. I think that's, and I'm speaking only soft skills, by the way, what we call soft skills, or what I like to call human skills, not the more technology aspects of things. Change, influence, maybe conflict, because I think the world is getting significantly polarized. So not just kind of in terms of politics and elections, but also in terms of ideas. And I think the best leaders are the ones who are managing to navigate the gray areas
Yeah.
and not necessarily go left or right or black or white. So change, influence, conflict, some things that come up for me immediately. I'll pass it to you, Richa, and maybe come back in a bit.
Yeah, so I feel one of the most important things would be emotional intelligence, and start which embodies everything from self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. And the other important thing that I feel cannot be replicated is growth mindset. I mean, at least today I think like that, the way we are foreseeing. So just adding on to the two things that you said, and strong communication
I
skills.
think moving forward, timeless is going to be that being able to manage that lack of control and having that sense of humility that I don't know. I've always felt like, a leader who says I don't know is a very, very powerful leader,
Yeah.
because they themselves can accept it and move things forward. So I think for me, 2025, with all this uncertainty with tech, and the uncertainty about AI is even more interesting, because we have no idea what will come out on the other side.
Yeah.
We actually have no idea to predict how this thing is going to actually work out. It's not like the old technology. A spreadsheet helps you to make things faster or something. What AI is actually going to give us, and that's why it's scary, to Richa's point earlier. What is it going to give? And I think a sense of humility to be able to kind of accept that you don't know.
We came up with this acronym and love to add some of the things that you have shared. So it's a CCECC acronym, right? 5 skills. And which I believe that no matter how advanced AI gets, we will continue to require humans to be good at these 5 things. So number one is, I think, communication,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, very simple and kind of uh, overrated at times also, but it will be something that becomes more and more important because we are outsourcing communication right now to AI a lot, and it will level the playing field for people who don't have great communication skills, but only up to a certain extent. I think after that, it will actually differentiate the good from the great, where people start to apply their own human judgment and communication skills. The other things are creativity, empathy,
Yeah.
collaboration, and critical thinking. Um, these were some of the things that we felt, really, really should be imbibed by most professionals, if not all.
Element of kind of feeling like you're collaborating in a team of 15 or 20, I think it's very hard in a remote hybrid environment, even if the team meets once a week. I think right now it's like 3-2-2 is what they talk about. 3 times remote, 2 times office, 2 times, of course, break for the weekend. um, I think in the newer area, the collaboration happens in smaller groups where you have a larger touch point with a few different people. So you may not have a sense of community or collaboration with all 15 people in the team, but maybe four, maybe, that
Mm.
you spend a lot of time with remotely, you talk a lot, you send messages, da, 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 and then there's the entire 15 people who come together once in a while. So I think the collaboration has become much tighter in smaller groups, and the sense of community and collaboration in larger groups is much, much harder to achieve because of this whole remote environment. I'm sure there are exceptions where hundreds of people feel fantastic and really integrated into one space. I'm sure there are organizations that manage that, but in my experience, I think people are becoming more comfortable in multiple small groups than one large one. Think about what the difference is between a mistake and a failure, because I think a lot of us are falling into the trap of calling a mistake a failure. A failure has a very definitive finality to it, like it's done, dusted, it's finished. And I think what we are making are a lot of mistakes, and just that simple reframe can help. So I made a mistake, I'm going to learn from it and try again. it's much harder to get out of a failure. So I'll just off the bat kind of try and reframe it to a mistake. And why are mistakes happening? But why do we feel like mistakes are failures? I think there's a couple of things there. One is, I think we are completely overstimulated by social media. So I'm cutting myself off significantly from it. Very infrequent. Because all we see is only the best side of everybody. So there's a lot behind that. So there's about limiting exposure to that kind of constant stream of success, which automatically makes you feel like a failure. So that's one. And the second is, I think, the loneliness epidemic as well. And by loneliness, I don't mean being alone in a room. I mean, kind of genuinely not feeling, like you said, the connection with people, like a true connect, like throw away your phone and your computer and just sit down and talk for half an hour. What needs to be done is, I think, finding resilience is about getting really comfortable with who you are, irrespective of what the world is throwing at you, what social media is saying to you, not feeling completely overburdened by it. And also in the loneliness, on the loneliness topic, just finding a bit of a support network. You are not alone. You shouldn't consider yourself alone, especially after a mistake slash failure. We feel like we're starting from zero, but that doesn't mean you are zero. I keep saying that again and again. You are not zero. You're starting from zero again, and that's quite all right. So a large part of my work, for example, is just being there with somebody, saying you can call me anytime and just have a quick chat, because I think we are really missing that. And by the way, this doesn't have to be a paid coach. It could be a friend. It could be one of the things I keep asking everybody is, and this is an anti-fragile question. Tomorrow you get a call and you've been let go. Yeah. Who are you going to call?
That always have a gratitude and achievement diary. So gratitude for what you have and achievement for what you have achieved, because that's
Mhm.
very important. Even as you're being bogged down by failure, then self-care, you have to, it's about the mindset, being very strong in your mind, and not being, also being, like you said, being able to influence. But for being resilient and being bounce back, you also need to have a mind of your own.
Yeah.
So I would probably not, at some parts, not get influenced.
Yeah.
Like you said, people on the social media are always, they're having the best time in their lives, they are successful, they are achieving, but not getting influenced by that.
Agree.
Breaking down your challenges, seeking
Agree.
advice, having that very close knit of and most importantly, staying connected with what your larger goal in life is.
Yes.
When you go back and you ask people, and I have, just like you, I have done this with people, starting with 25 to right up to 45 and 50, and I tell them that you are about to have a plane crash, and you just have to write down one note. This is who I wanted to be, or this is how I wanted to show up, and this is how I showed up. And most of them don't know where they want to go and what they want to be. So
Yeah.
knowing that and then taking baby steps towards it, I mean, kind of makes you.
Yes. Yeah.
And I always, yeah, and especially when I'm going for, let's say, pitching or something, especially when I started Finesse. So initially I used to always say, if they don't hire me, their loss. So so many ways of working on your mind. And
Agreed.
sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, no. I mean, when thoughts flow, more newer thoughts come up. Building on that, something I wanted to add to that is that you said, "Do they want to bounce back?" And that's such an interesting question, because if you look at the careers, I mean, how we have moved through the ages, the industrial revolution, where job security was everything. People wanted basically a paycheck and security that I'll have a job for the next 30, 40 years or whatever. Then the information, IT, technology revolution, where it was more about maybe a little more than just job security, a little satisfaction, little
Yeah.
interest, little, inspiration, happiness from the job. And then now, of course, it's social revolution. So it's about, do I look cool because I go to this company? I mean, certain companies have clearly lost their sheen, right, over the last few years, and certain companies are looking cooler. But then the very important thing is to ensure that there's a balance. To your point about balance earlier, Arjun, that it should not just be about just the style and the sheen and the social and the Insta worthy job, but also something that you are interested in. It adds value to you. Over 10 years, you'll end up becoming a better person. I actually honestly feel that what you do shapes who you become. So
Yeah.
be very careful what careers you pick, because you'll spend a lot of time at it, and that will shape your personality, your life in ways that you can't possibly foresee.
your family can be great support, but when it comes to career, try to see if you can have somebody outside your family as well, because a lot of times we end up taking whatever our families, especially the coordinate family, says for granted. Especially in times of difficulty from a professional standpoint, I've seen that especially Gen Z and the millennials today, they're not taking advice from family as much as people used to in prior years. So today you
Hmm.
can't just depend on family. You have to either find colleagues, friends, or professional coaches and mentors. And I think the value that they can add to your career is multifold than what you would imagine. Yeah, I completely echo that thought.
And the interesting kind of contrast I see is that one group has something and doesn't have something, and the other group is exactly the opposite. And I'll explain this. So earlier on, it's this lot of style and online footprint and digital positioning and all of that, but then the skills are lacking. Still, even today, hiring out of universities is very, very hard, or hiring even people with 3 4 years experience is very, very hard. So if you're earlier on in your career, please don't just focus on how you come across and how you look online, and what your profile is like, because the first thing you're going to put in your profile, I am going to ask you, and you better have a really, really strong, powerful, substantial answer to that. Focus on building skills early on. The other stuff is fluff. So that's the one I'd like to tell them. And exactly opposite to people who have, I don't know, 10 to 20 plus years experience. You have a lot of experience, but are you talking about it? Are you putting, I'm not asking you to become a Instagram influencer, but do you have a good LinkedIn profile? Do you have a way of introducing yourself? Can you speak about your top 3 achievements over the last decade? One of the first things my own mentor does anytime I do a piece of work is, first time said, "Hi Sham, okay, what did you do well?" And I used to struggle with the answer to that, because you always go straight to what you didn't do well, right? So knowing what your strength, knowing what you have done well, and then being able to present it, I think is my recommendation for the folks later on in their careers.
More and more percentage of people are disengaged in their jobs, and especially the younger generation, because they are picking up jobs for probably looking nice, like you had said. They are not validating whether it is resonating with their values, whether it is important to them. So first of all, they need to evaluate it basis whether it is resonating with their values. The second thing is, a very strong trend that's come up is that organizations are now doing skill based hiring. And 58% are doing very specific role skill based hiring. So in addition to whatever your educational qualification is, you have to continuously upskilling yourself. Your personal development there becomes very important.
Hmm.
And without repeating, people are doing a social audit now. We do that also.
Very nice.
And yeah, and building your behavioral competencies, that's going to become very, very important, because even if the skills that we talked about that are going to become important, those are all behavioral competencies.
Yep.
So working on them, consciously practicing them, becomes very important. Network, and most importantly, don't be a clone of everybody else. Have that one USP. Be sure of who you are and how you are showing up. And then that links back to your value system and what's important. And then you're authentic. In an interview, you come across as authentic and hireable.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, fantastic. I'm really glad that we are recording this, because I feel like a lot of people can benefit from these fundamental, timeless tenets that would apply to anybody kind of navigating a difficult job market at any point in time. I especially like the last point, Richard, that you made around not being a clone, because I say this often, there are maybe tens of thousands, maybe millions of people working in the field that an individual professional works in. Let's say I'm a engineer. Now there are millions in India, right? There are 15 million that are graduating every year, approximately. Now, on paper, we could all look very similar, but
Yep.
we still differ,
Yep.
and we can only do that if we take the time to reflect on our strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yep.
You can't just come up with it just by putting in the same kind of daily
Yep.
grunt work day in day out. You have to take time out, and that was the whole purpose of this session, right? To add that extra layer of dimension of kind of planning and knowing that it takes deliberation and intention to craft success in the foreseeable future. It's not going to always happen on its own, right? So I think brilliant topics and pointers that were shared. I have one last question that was actually shared by one of the audience members. I don't know if you both saw that. It's a meta question for you, actually, at a sort of a meta level, since you both are coaches. It's from Rochak, and I'll show it here. The question is, what specific skills do you think coaches will need to cultivate by 2030 to effectively support their clients and stay ahead in their industry? Um, that's a, I think it's a great question because I'm sure you both are already on top of this, right? I'm sure you're kind of telling this to other clients and folks, but I'm sure you're applying it to yourself. So, what can be helpful to coaches in upskilling themselves?
Go for it.
You want to take a shot, Shyam?
Sure, sure. I'm not going to talk about the core skills of a coach of things like empathy and connecting with clients, but I actually think in some way it is tech and AI, because I'll tell you very, very honestly, my biggest challenge in doing large coaching assignments is actually not the coaching. It's the scheduling, it's the, ensuring people are there, they're prepared, they've come with some good questions. It's basically a lot of that background what happens, and it's hard. It's really hard to get a. I'm coaching 20 people in one organization at the moment, and the actually bringing it all together is very, very difficult. So I think if AI, tech, other things can kind of help me in, this is a very personal answer, to bring that entire picture together, it's absolutely game changing for me. So of course we need to become better coaches, being able to do great in the human side. But I actually think from my perspective, this is a fantastic space for AI to help us bring large pieces of coaching work together.
So for me, there are two parts to this answer. The first part is, and this will have to be developed in coaches, again, a behavioral competency more than a skill, where the coach is 1% more invested in the client's success than the client himself or herself is. That's one part of it. The other part of it is, so I am a PCC coach from ICF, and one thing I see is that, ethicality is something which is very important. So as a coach, you are holding a very sacred space for your client. But multiple times I see that coaches violate this because the organization and the contract writes you have to share what happened with the coach. So the ability to develop that muscle, that you are going to be ethical to the coaching practice and not to making money, is very, very important. And then of course all the other competencies like holding the space, ensuring that you are able to evoke awareness, and there is client growth, there is action, all of that. So that comes in that 1%. And the second is the code of ethics. Be ethical. And and that's when coaching will become truly transformational, because I grapple with this, Arjun, many times. So they'll say that no, the previous coach used to give us give us an outline of the progress of the coaching, without realizing that it's not for the coach to do it, because I'm violating every code of conduct by talking about my coaching to the organization. So these two from my side.
All right, great. I hope that was helpful, Rochak, and thanks for asking that question. I think with that, we are ready to wrap this up. I can't believe we shared we covered all these wealth of insights that you both brought to the table. Honestly, I genuinely mean it. Like when I was thinking about this topic, I wasn't sure what exactly we were going to cover, but I think the things that we have talked about, from the trends we are seeing in the market to kind of the mindsets that we need to develop, and how you have been helping not just your clients but your children, and how you are preparing better for the future. I think we covered a lot of ground, so thank you so much for bringing such nuggets of wisdom today. We will have recorded this. It will be available to folks who couldn't join, and please do share it with whoever you think it could be helpful for. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of the evening. Thanks, Richa and Shyam.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.